The Russian army continues to suffer losses on the front in Ukraine due to a severe shortage of personnel and drones. Even Kremlin propagandists are beginning to acknowledge the critical situation, reports journalist Denis Kazansky. According to Kazansky, Russian blogger Tatiana Montyan complained in one of her speeches that Ukrainian armed forces drones are effectively wiping out occupying forces and the Russians are unable to respond. According to her, Moscow lacks the necessary manpower and equipment to mount a truly successful offensive. Montyan noted that a breakthrough on the front line requires numerical superiority, roughly speaking, a large number of soldiers for every 100 meters. Technical support is also essential, primarily drones and well-established production. But, as she herself acknowledged, the Russian army lacks all of these, or at least no clear advantage. Therefore, all offensive actions by the Russian army only result in massive losses of manpower. Thus, even Moscow's supporters are effectively confirming that Russia is stuck in a trench war where Ukrainian drones play a decisive role, destroying enemy personnel and equipment. A shortage of personnel exacerbates the situation. New waves of mobilized troops are unable to compensate for the colossal losses resulting from the Russian command's absurd tactical plans. In addition, Z-bloggers also admitted that massive strikes on Ukrainian cities are essentially senseless, striking airfields with drones that are like spitting peas at a wall from a tube. To seriously disable a military-industrial complex plant, we need not low-yield kamikaze drones like Shahed/Geranium, but dozens of precision-guided munitions with half-ton warheads. Basically, they're shooting at an elephant with a small shot again. Russian Z-propagandist, angry patriot Maxim Kalashnikov wrote, "There were very few actual missiles, including 2 Kinzhal missiles, only 40, a laughingstock. This is not a good sign. There's no sign of a way out of the deadlock." Zelenski promises to cut off Moscow's power supply in response. They should have also flown a kite over Brussels. Tactics without strategy is vanity before defeat, the propagandist lamented. Well-known Z-blogger Yevgeny Golman made a bold statement, effectively accusing the Kremlin of betrayal. His speech was a flash of frustration sparked by the Ukrainian armed forces' retaliatory strike on Belgorod. Golman made no secret of his despair and spoke about the real situation within Russia. According to him, in Belgorod, after the HIMARS strikes, there was no power for so many hours. He emphasized that both Stary Oskol and Novi Oskol were also without power, and drones regularly attack border regions. The Z-blogger harshly criticized the authorities for preferring to feign calm instead of making decisions. And we're all TT, ha ha. Peskov's telling us how our economy is doing. What economy? People are being killed every day, he declared. The propagandist complained that the Kremlin was ignoring the war, but at the same time called on the authorities to introduce a counter-terrorism operation. "We're at war. Everyone's fighting against us, and we're kissing. Not us, of course. Not the people, but the government," he said. All this confirms that Kremlin propagandists are already opposing Vladimir Putin's policies.
Leaders from around Europe are converging on Copenhagen on Wednesday for 2 summits focused on security, defense, and the war in Ukraine, following a spate of troubling drone incidents at Danish airports and military bases over the last week. According to Associated Press, Denmark's defense ministry said that a precision radar system has been set up at Copenhagen airport to help keep watch. Unidentified drones forced the closure of the airfield a week ago, causing major disruptions to air traffic. France, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, and the UK have also sent aircraft, ships, and air defense systems. Ukraine's armed forces have dispatched a mission to Denmark for joint exercises, sharing its experience on combating Russian drones. Taking to Facebook on Monday, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said that the authorities can't conclude who is behind the hybrid attacks. But we can find that there is primarily one country that poses a threat to Europe's security, and that's Russia. Russia is the focus of a meeting of European Union leaders on Wednesday, notably how to prepare Europe to fend against any future Russian aggression by 2030, especially as the United States turns its focus on security concerns in Asia and elsewhere. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenski is due to address the EU leaders by video link. Leaders and intelligence services believe that Russia could mount an assault elsewhere in Europe in 3 to 5 years, and that President Vladimir Putin is intent on testing NATO as doubts swirl about US President Donald Trump's commitment to the organization. Several Russian drones flew into Poland's airspace on September 10. NATO aircraft were scrambled, and some of the drones were shot down. It was the first direct encounter between NATO and Moscow since Russia launched its war on Ukraine on February 24, 2022. The incident jolted leaders across Europe, raising questions about how prepared the alliance is against Russia. Days later, NATO jets escorted 3 Russian warplanes out of Estonia's airspace. The EU talks on Ukraine will focus on continued military and financial support for the conflict-ravaged country, as funds, weapons, and ammunition once provided by the United States dry up.
Capire che dopo la pubblicità.